Welcome to Earth Centric Lighting, for everything lighting related and how to use lighting in your projects and life.
Okay, welcome to Earth Centric Lighting Podcast. In today's show, I'm going to talk about the difference between lighting layout and lighting design, because there are a lot of different concepts out there. Some people are like, you know what, it's just light. How hard can it be? And it depends on the task, what it is that you're doing. So lighting layout, for example, I just got contracted with the city to help them out with their salt shop, and I obviously probably should have been a little bit higher, but I only charged them $150 because a lighting layout is so easy. It's still complex in the way that you have to have a basic knowledge of lighting, photometrics, how to use the software, how to lay it out, because if I just throw a bunch of lights up there, it's not going to perform. They're not going to be very happy, and those lights probably cost them about 20 grand. So then, only charging $150 for design, and then if I do a shitty job with the design, or with the layout, then they pay for all the material and it's not performing adequately. That's a big no-no. People aren't going to keep using me. So you want to be good with the photometric software, know what you're talking about for lighting, have some experience. So what I mean is, I went and did a site visit and walked that shop because it was a local job. And I talked to them up front about, because it was open, like the big open pole barn, like 100 by 50 feet, and the sheetrock wasn't up, it was all just gravel. And I asked them, I was like, so what color are the walls going to be? Are you finishing it or no? And they're leaving it open. They're not going to finish it. They're not going to add concrete on the ground. They're going to leave it gravel. Now that's very important, because light has reflectancy, and if there's no drywall, which usually would be painted white, maybe it's painted another color, but that would have like at least a 50% reflectancy, probably even 80, because white is very reflective. That's why we don't see the color, because it's bouncing most of the light back into the space. But since they're not putting drywall there, and it's just gonna be the sheet metal, the gray sheet metal on the backside of their outer siding, and then 2x4s, it's going to be a very, very low reflectancy, probably like 20%, maybe less. And then the gravel, of course, is going to be, because it's going to break up the particles of the light, it's going to be even less, probably like 5%. So when you got to know the photometric software and be able to put that in when you're building the structure in there. And then you're picking out the light, you're picking out the right beam spread, you're looking at the trusses, how far apart they are, so that way you can put the lights in between, and then you pick the beam spread accordingly, so that way you're not creating shadows on the ground. Because this instance, they want to flood it with light. They want 100-foot candles or more to be able to see while they're bringing in their equipment and doing tasks, those types of things. There's no need for a bunch of creative different solutions. So it's just a high bay layout. We also did some wall packs on the outside, so I did photometrics for that as well. Ultimately, it took me about 8 hours after doing the product research and doing the layouts and putting the drawings together. So probably realistically should have been $300 for a business, but I just charged him $150. Plus I know the guy and I know he's cheap. So we did that for them and we finished that up. But then lighting design, now if some residents, just an example of a 10,000 square foot residence, my competitors, a lot of time, they come in at 60 grand. Sometimes they're even more. Some really high-end designers out there, or that maybe think pretty highly of themselves, are probably 150 grand for that type of job. We came in at 25 grand, and I don't think I'm being biased here, but I think we do a lot better job than a lot of those other companies. But how could I go from 25 grand to 150 grand when something's a lighting layout and something is lighting design? Well, the difference here is there's a lot more design labor involved. And when I say a lot more, I mean it took like 6 months of design labor to finish this thing. So I understand why the competitors are at 60 grand, because it's a lot of work. And you think about it, if I'm doing a custom residence and we're doing lighting design, we're not just changing the way the space feels, or the way the space looks, we're also affecting the way it feels. So a lot of the things you gotta look out for is each room is different. Each room has a different feel. There's a master bedroom, there's a master bathroom, there's a master closet, there's a living room, there's a kitchen, there's guest bedrooms, there's bathrooms. Some of these places, they have movie theaters. You're also lighting the exterior facade and highlighting those, and what you're doing that's very different, instead of just flooding the space, is you're creating layers of light. So you can change the way the space looks and feels with the press of a button. And you gotta really know your stuff to be able to do this, because in this house, there's some of the ceiling is drywall, some of it is wood ceiling, and some of it is sloped, some of it is flat, some of it is 18 feet tall, some of it is 10 feet tall. So if I'm just using the same light over and over, it's going to look very crappy. It's going to look like someone didn't know what they're doing, did the design, and put it in there. And a lot of these clients, they have art they're wanting to highlight, they're having custom rock walls, beams they want to light up. So just a good example is the master bedroom. In the master bedroom, there's a rock wall that's on the fireplace, and then there's also wood beams on the ceiling, and they want to show off those beams. So one layer of light, we have a wall-mounted small 5x9 inch micro light that's shining up, and you can't just put any old up light or tape light unless that's what they want. If they want a cove around there, that's very different than you would use some linear type tape light with a COB, so it looks like a continuous line of light. But this was more, they wanted to light up the whole ceiling to show it off. So we picked out a company that has an asymmetric throw, meaning it's non-symmetrical. So symmetrical would be there's light going to both sides. Asymmetric means there's just one light going to one side, so it's not creating this big glare bomb on the wall that it's mounted on. And it also has a wide throw, so it can cover the space because it was a big room. So we have about 3 of those, and we're doing photometrics on that, on the ceiling to see how it looks. And now the client doesn't really understand photometrics. Those are numbers. That means nothing to them. That's not sexy or attractive or beautiful design work. So we do the work in the photometrics, and we also do the same amount of work by putting in a visualization program, Twin Motion. I don't know if you guys have heard of that. And then we take the 3D model and we draw in the lights using Lumen to show them this is what the overall goal is, what we want the space to look like. This is how it could look. And Lumen, unfortunately, doesn't have foot candles. It doesn't. You can plug the IAS file in there, but it's not going to perform exactly the way the fixture performs, if that makes sense. So someone could draw up a really nice visual in the visualization software and then have a really crappy product result after their design if they're not knowing how to do photometrics and how to read those numbers and pick out the right fixture and look at photometric reports. So that's one aspect. That's just the master bedroom, and we've already done the work twice, and then we do the work a third time by drafting it up in a drafting software. We use SketchUp, and the reason why we do it 3 times over is because there's not really a great lighting design software out there that does all three of these. So I break it up by using an architectural drafting software, using a lighting photometric software, and using architectural visualization rendering software that has been developed by Unreal Engine and gaming, because they have some of the best visual effects that I've seen. And so that can really show the client what it is. And that is just one layer of light. And all that work and all of that done, that's just takes care of one aspect. So now you got another layer where you need to fill the space with light, where maybe they do want times a day where it is flooded and everything's light. So then you're picking out the downlights. And back to that situation, it was a sloped ceiling and it was wood, and they wanted trimless. So that's a lot of research to find the right product that can do a trimless and have a trim kit for a wood ceiling. And then you're picking out something that can be adjustable since it slopes, so you can aim it down. Because I see a lot of people, sometimes people selling product that aren't really good at design, they don't look at those details. And they see a flat slope or a slope ceiling, and they're putting in a non-adjustable downlight that is, you can't aim it. So then one side of the room is going to be very bright and the other side is not. So you want something adjustable so you can aim it. Even if it's on the closest wall, maybe you're trying to highlight some art, you can aim it towards the object you want to highlight. And then you do photometric reports for that to see the spacing you need, see what beam spread you need. Because if you put in a light that has no optics, you're going to lose 90% of the light output within the first 3 feet that it leaves the light. And I've seen this in $4 million homes where they build it and there's not that great light because they're putting up a $20 light fixture and wondering why it's not performing adequately because it's 1,000 lumens, even though we're using 1,000 lumen downlight, but we're picking out one that can be adjustable, and it has a 24-degree optic in it, and it also has the light optic is regressed up in, so it's not causing glare unless you stand underneath it and look directly up, but still would be minimal because it's not a low ceiling. So this beam spread, light acts like water because it's both particle and wave. So if it has a funnel, if it's being controlled, you're pushing the light out further. And the narrower it is, the more higher center beam candle it's going to have. And the further the distance away it is, the more it's going to spread. So you do a 25-degree beam and space it accordingly so there's no light gaps. That beam spread should be like 8 feet by the time it reaches the floor. So then you're spacing your fixtures out every no more than 8 feet. So that way the light, when it reaches the work plane or the area that you're trying to light, it's going to overlap and not create shadows. And then, so that's 2 layers of light. And again, we've done the work 3 times as far as drafting it up with fixture placement, markups, and measurements showing how far apart you space it. Then the photometrics to make sure it's enough light and we're picking out the right thing. And then the visualization rendering to show them what it could look like. And this is just one room. Still just the master bedroom. It's not even, yeah, I moved on. And in that master bedroom, there's still, 1, 2, 3, 4 other layers of light. So they want to glow underneath the seating area in front of the fireplace. So we're picking out a tape light that can glow underneath there and channel and could be installed either corner mount and washed back on the wall or tucked back in towards the wall and washed out, pushed out. And something small enough that's not standing out like this big light source. It just looks like light is kind of glowing from underneath that seating area. And then to highlight that rock wall, we're picking out lights that are adjustable, and we're doing the photometric report there as well to see how far off the wall it needs to be to get the desired look they want. And if they want to wash the rock evenly, space it off a certain amount so that way it can wash it. And if they want to graze it, which accentuates shadows and creates depth to 3D rock or stone or whatever they're doing, you mount that light closer to the wall. And you got to do photometrics on that as well to see how it's going to look. And then another layer that they have is art light on the wall. Another layer they have is some bedside reading lights. You don't need to do photometrics on that. Another layer they have is a centerpiece decorative light or a fan. And I think it's best when lighting designers and interior designers work together, because interior designers are great at picking out the decorative lights, but sometimes they think that that's enough light to do a task and fill the space, but it's not. You need the other layers in there so that way you can have enough light during the middle parts or dark parts of the day when you want or you're trying to do some things in there and you need that light to be able to see. And then the decorative lighting designers aren't great at picking out decorative and matching color themes, or knowing what kind of style would match with their home they're going for. So that's why it's really good combo to work together. And same thing with the install part. I've worked in the field before as an electrical contractor. My dad owns an electrical contracting business, and I know how hard it is to install a lot of these light fixtures, and a lot of manufacturers miss that as well. They like to blame, it's the contractor can't figure out how to install it. Well, they got 50 freaking pieces to try to put it together. So a lot of times we're aware of that. We try to pick the best things that are easiest to install, and at the same time, we're not making the job easier for it needs to be a good contractor that knows how to or is willing to do millwork and route in to put in a channel underneath the shelf and make it look seamlessly flush. You're kind of modifying parts of the construction to fit the light, if that makes sense. But there are ways we can do it where it's more simplistic, but that's usually a conversation we have during the first part of the meeting and what the overall goal is with the job and how much work is being done. But a lot of these people building these big custom homes, or even a 3,000 or 5,000 square foot home, some people that still want the custom look, it takes a lot more attention to detail. And I've even worked with reps where they say they'll help me out building the fixture schedule, and I give them a shot doing that, and then it's a waste of time because I gotta go redo the fixture schedule completely because they have no attention to detail. They're putting in fixed downlights in a slope ceiling, and they're also putting in LED trim inserts without a can. This is not a canless solution because there's different types of downlights out there. Some of them are canless, meaning they don't require housing. Some of them do. Some of them need to be a sloped housing, so they're adjustable even if the trim is fixed. But if it's sloped and it can fit a certain degree of pitch, then that fixed downlight is going to shine straight down, unless you're wanting to highlight the wall and do a wall wash to bring in that vertical light. So that's just one space, and then every single space within this house was just like that, sometimes more complicated, even the theater room, especially the dining room. And then another layer I forgot is the step lights, the guide lights. So you have all this light, you also need a layer of lighting control, so that way it can be turned, adjusted throughout the day automatically or manually overrid. It's very, very helpful to have it do that. So that way in the morning you have your little lights kicking on, so you can start waking up and seeing, and then it starts to get brighter to help wake you up, because our bodies are biologically wired to communicate with light. It's what helps us produce natural hormones and to let us know it's time to be awake and start getting those chemicals in our body to help promote levels of wakefulness and alertness, and then at the same time help us get ready to sleep in the evening. So another level of complexity is, and what we're doing as light designers is we're taking all this complexity and we're turning it into simplicity if it's a good lighting designer and they know what they're doing. So another level is if the client wants tunable white, or maybe they want tunable white plus color changing RGBW, and maybe that's not the whole space, maybe that's just specific areas. Like art lighting, if you use color changing lights, you can actually change the look of the art by changing the color of the light, because it changes the wavelengths of light that are hitting it, and it changes the color of the art piece on the wall. So then if you're doing the tunable white as well, you have to specify the whole part number and find the right product that can be used in both wood ceiling or mud in, and you're picking up different part numbers. That's why we do type labels, because this type goes here in this specific location. Because if you try to use type LT14 and LT16, well, that one has a drywall ceiling. It's not going to work because you have one that's designed to go into a wood ceiling. And that's very different. Someone just wants a generic home layout where they're just putting in trimmed downlights, and they can use the same downlight within that, whether it's wood or drywall. And sometimes they want that. It's still a lot of work and a lot of design labor in lighting engineering, figuring all that out to make sure it's going to look and feel good. So if they're spending that much on this home and they're spending this much on all their interior finishes, they want to get the lighting right. Why would you not pay enough money for the one thing that has the most impact on how the space looks and feels? And that's the lighting. So that's one of the main difference between lighting design and lighting layout. Layouts I can crush out in like a couple in a day. Design, yeah, it takes like 6 months. A good example is like a room. We call it the basic layout is like 4 cans and a fan, and yeah, that's enough light. But then, say the client has a textured wall on one side, well, that floods the light with uniformity, and you can't even tell that there's a shadow. You can't really tell the difference between different depths and colors. So if you use lighting layout and put in layers, maybe you do a wall wash on one side or a 60-degree beam on one to highlight an art piece, and then you do a graze light down one side of the wall to show that texture. You get to see the shadows, and it makes it stand out a lot more, and it makes the room feel very different. And then you have a downlight highlighting an object in a room. You have your step lights for wayfinding at night, and then maybe up in the ceiling, you have a drop ceiling and do a light around the perimeter, or you have a cove and the light shining up in that cove mixed with downlights. And then you have some lighting on the wall as well too. And you can either have a wall sconce, or you can put light up in the ceiling and have the light highlighting the wall, so the architecture becomes the show. There's lots of different things that you can do with lighting design to make the space look amazing and feel great. And it's definitely an art and a science. This is not just residential, this is commercial spaces as well. So, and I would say there's something psychological too, that when I've done lighting design for free when I was in supply, and it wasn't to that extent, but it was enough. But people didn't buy the material because they felt like there was something wrong, like we were trying to sell them something, and it's just natural. It's like subconscious belief that maybe people are trying to take advantage of you. But when they pay for a consultant, they're invested. They want to do it. They already agreed, and they're looking forward to seeing the outcome. So if you can have a good lighting designer that can think about all that and work together with everyone as a team instead of clashing, you're really like, in the line designer world, you're really like how the football team draws up plays, and everyone follows those plays. But you need the 11 players on the field. You need the offensive coach. You need the defensive coach. You need the special teams coach. And everyone needs to execute those plays and work together. That's the way the line designers should be. They shouldn't just hand off the plans and be like, okay, now you figure it out. It should be designed in a way that they can follow those plans seamlessly, and if they have questions, they can call you, but realistically, you want to think about the contractor, not blame them. You want to try to help them out. You want to think about the electrical contractor and his job and how challenging it is, and think about the architect and what they're trying to achieve, the interior designer and the homeowner. So that's why you charge for lighting design, because it's about 1,000 times more work, and there's a lot involved to it, and there's a lot of knowledge and experience that you need to have. If you don't have it, you can learn it and start small, but it definitely pays to have someone who knows what they're doing. And I do personally have 20 years of experience doing it. Just within the last 5 years, I've started my own business. But yeah, we never used to draft our own plans. We had an electrical engineer who would draft up the plans on a lot of commercial spaces, and we'd do the photometrics. But now it seems like we've had to learn how to draft our own plans, do the photometrics, and do the visualization software. I think hopefully eventually in the future there will be a good program you can use where all three of those are intertwined together, so you're not doing 3 times the work in that space. But right now, that's the way we have to do it to get the clients and the jobs that we need, and the architects to see like, oh, there is a difference in this lighting design. And a lighting layout for an exterior, there would be a light source on the wall that's shining out to light the space outside. And you can do that. That's one layer of light if the client wants, to be able to see out in a certain area. Maybe there's a path. But a lot of times for homes, you're trying to minimize glare and light trespass, even in commercial spaces too. So maybe the path is just illuminated with landscape lighting, and that's a layer. And then you have downlights over the patio for the task, so you can turn those on automatically. And on the control system, after it maybe you forget to turn them off, they should shut off automatically. And then in the evening, you have in-ground lights highlighting the columns, the rocks. You have some vertical light. You have on the wall, maybe you have some lights uplighting the beams on the eave. Those are all creating and filling in. Sometimes you don't necessarily need those on 100%, so that control system helps out a lot with maybe you can have that program so at 9 o'clock it turns on at 30% and the in-ground lights are at 50%, and they're spaced off a certain amount and aimed towards the wall to create a certain effect. So it's definitely a lot more work. That's why we've also teamed up with custom integrators, because they do controls, and that's a very important aspect too. So the client needs to pay if they want this many layers of lighting. They should understand or have it communicated to them that they are going to want some sort of lighting control, and usually that requires some special commissioning too, so someone can program it to do all these things and have that conversation with the lighting designer about the overall look. so that way the lighting system can adjust throughout the day. Whether it's tunable white and it's mimicking the sun, or even if it's static white, you still can do a really good job at eliminating glare, highlighting architectural detail, and interior design detail, and making the space align with the biology of the end user who's living in it, and make it look and feel really good. So, I can't really think of anything else for the difference between lighting layout and lighting design. There's definitely a lot more I could talk about, but I feel like that's a very good summary and understanding, giving you guys an understanding of what the difference is, because a lot of people just aren't aware. And I feel like, along with some other people, not trying to do my own horn here, but kind of trend setting here, because you think about it, the electric light bulb has only been around for 150 years, and it has advanced so much, and people aren't aware how much it affects our sleep and the way the space feels. If you walk into a room and it feels good, I guarantee you probably 90% of the time it's the lighting, and a lot of that gets missed in commercial spaces and residential spaces. And we've, as human beings, have evolved with the rising and setting of the sun for the last 300,000 years. And compare that to how long the light bulb has been out, for 150. Not a lot of people probably are even aware of the effects of light. And you can just even tell, just probably from the olden days, even the way it feels from like candles, in a restaurant, or sitting next to a campfire, or even just the fire in your own house. That creates a feeling. That's part of light too. So I hope that you guys found that helpful, and thank you for listening. I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up. I'll have my contact info for our lighting design company, TK Lighting Design, in the podcast show notes. And if you like what you're hearing here on Earth Centric Lighting and want to have a conversation, or maybe you want to be on the show because you have something to share, it would be great. I'd love to hear from you. Just feel free to reach out to my email or my phone number. Thank you.